Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of the Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Northern Illinois Huskies, who finished 7-6 and had a big G5 versus P5 win versus Boston College to start the year and ended the season with a win in the Camilla Bowl. They wrap up their season, or they wrap up their 2024 spring practice with a spring game on April 27th. Please welcome to the show our guest, Eddie Carifio, sports editor, and he covers the Northern Illinois Huskies for the Daily Chronicle and can be found at Husky Wire on X. Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Appreciate it. It's a heck of a video, by the way.
Thank you.
Glad you like. Hopefully you're jacked up. Maybe you can run through a brick wall right now.
I think I definitely could run through one of these cubicle walls, I think.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into sports reporting and covering Northern Illinois?
Yeah, I've been doing this for, 130, 140 years, however old I am. It seems like about that long. It's what I wanted to do from a very young age. I've been out here in DeKalb for almost a decade now, doing some NIU coverage early on, but I've taken over the beat. I took over the beat full time in 2020. So this is year 5 coming up. So, yeah, that's that.
Awesome. The Northern Illinois offense is typically dominated by a strong running game, and last year was no exception as they ranked 37th in rushing offense, while the passing offense ranked 105th. We'll get to that strong running game in just a moment, but first let's talk about the quarterbacks. Last year's starter, Rocky Lombardi, has graduated, but they do return last year's top backup in Ethan Hampton, as well as C.J. Jordan, Josh Holst, and they bring in Jalen Macon from Arkansas Pine Bluff and Kenny Luth from American River Junior College. How did that quarterback room look this spring, and kind of how did it shape up?
Very secretive. Hammock likes playing stuff close to or NIU coach Thomas Hammock likes playing stuff very close to the chest. Is very secretive when it comes to injuries, and this is really the first quarterback battle in his tenure here, and he's doing the same thing. He says there are 3 guys that he likes. Okay, who are the 3 guys? He doesn't say. Now, obviously, you could put it together from the playing time. It clearly looks like Ethan Hampton's probably the starter. Like, if you had to choose a starter right now, it would probably be Ethan Hampton, who filled in a little bit for Lombardi over the last 2 years. He's the longtime incumbent. He's going to junior year, I want to say. But there's him. But Macon and Luth have been right there in playing time. Luth is kind of a similar skill set. It looks like he's generally been the number 3 guy. Sometimes his leapfrog. Macon is the number 2. Just again going by like the order, and they come into practice and the snaps and everything. That's all we have to go by on this. But Yeah, no, Macon's really interesting. Like you said, transfer from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He 1 second is making these amazing like throws downfield that no other quarterback on this team is making, and the next second he's he's the only one getting sacked in a non-contact drill or throwing a interception or something. So he seems like a very high risk, high reward type right now. So I think they're still waiting for him to come along a little bit, and that's why it's probably Hampton right now. But as Hammock would be quick to point out, there's still all of the summer and all the fall left to go.
Absolutely. For those that may not be familiar with Ethan Hampton and his playing style, how would you describe that to our listeners?
It's a slur these days, but game manager probably pops into mind. He's able to scramble when he has to, but you're not going to be running a ton of option stuff with him. He can make plays with his feet, but again, you're not going to want to really design anything. He could take the shots, but you want to make sure that they're there. He's not going to be threading the needle between three defenders to find the guy. Yeah. So that's probably his style there. He'll make the plays that he should make and that sort of thing, which if everyone else is doing their jobs, he's the guy that can take advantage of that situation.
Moving on to that strong running game, and they returned just about everyone from a year ago, the key pieces being leading rusher Ontario Brown and top backup Gavin Williams. How did those two look this spring, and what can we expect for them here in 2024?
Yeah, Williams is kind of like, a third down back, and his usage is going to be interesting because in the spring game, they do a showcase. They don't do a game. Everyone else on the planet does a spring game. They don't. They just basically do a practice. So with a little more 11 on 11. But in the game or the practice or the showcase or whatever, Williams was actually on the sidelines. So it was basically Brown, and they actually sat Brown out for a series with the ones. Hammock is very ever since the injury late in 22 season, Hammock has really tried shifting up the way they do spring practices to try to avoid wear and tear on his players, which is probably a really smart decision. That 2022 season, anyone who was there around the team knows just how high those expectations were, and just how, I guess, crushing the 2-10 or whatever they ended up going that year was. So Brown sat out a series, and so that led Justin, even before the spring showcase throughout. Justin, I want to make sure I say the right name. Justin Lynch has been getting a ton of carries and reps, and he's looking like he could be a factor. The converted quarterback, brother of NIU Heisman legend Jordan Lynch, Heisman candidate legend Jordan Lynch. So he shifted the running back, and technically he was a running back last year. It was not really used a ton. I think he ended up getting a red shirt last year. So definitely this year that he seems to be more in play, and that adds a really interesting wrinkle. Not to jump ahead on the list here, but there's a lot of guys who can throw the ball on the field. You got a former quarterback, obviously, in Lynch at running back. When we get to it, Trayvon Rudolph was a high school quarterback, and they haven't shied away from throwing with him, usually on a 2-point conversion type plays. So, you get that with the quarterback. There's definitely an opportunity for some chicanery if they really wanted to.
So with Lynch kind of getting a little part of the mix this year, I believe Ontario Brown and Gavin Williams are out of eligibility next year. Do you think he would be one of those guys to step up for, in the future?
Yeah, I mean, this year he'll shed a lot to see if he could be, a number one. He seems a lot more like a situational. And it was weird to say, but he almost seems like a fullback type. And Hammock loves himself a fullback. So a lot of the success in 2021 was behind Clint Rakovich, who I think still in the NFL. He may still be with the Falcons, I think. But a lot of that success in 2021 he was a big part of it. And I know he's been trying to replicate that since, and Lynch could be a part of that. Jalen Poe is another guy in there. I think he's a redshirt freshman, I want to say. He's gotten, obviously, a lot of the number 2 reps. Of course, that's pretty much – those are the 4 running backs they've had in camp. That's pretty much it. But no, there have been a couple others, but those are like the four main guys. And Poe, probably isn't going to see the most playing time this year, barring an injury. But he's probably the guy who's like the guy for the future. If obviously the giant asterisk these days is if.
Absolutely. The Huskies suffered a few losses at wide receiver with Casper Rutkowicz and Davis Patterson graduating and Billy Dozier transferring, but they do return their top two wide receivers in 2023. You mentioned one of those earlier, Trevon Rudolph and Grayson Barnes. They also bring in Kenji Lewis, coming also from Arkansas Pine Bluff. Kind of how did those guys look this spring, and do you think anyone can kind of crack the starting rotation this year? Someone new.
Yeah, well, it's interesting with Barnes because he's listed as a wide receiver, but they play him at tight end. I mean, he's bulked up. They're expecting to use him, as a tight end, a lot more in blocking schemes than they did last year. Practically, he's a wide receiver, but technically, so he may shift more towards receiver, which is also kind of interesting from the standpoint they're not super deep with guys with experience. I mean, obviously Rudolph, he had that breakout 2021 year where he had like 800, or I don't even need to exaggerate, it's like 350 yards against one of the Michigans. I want to say Western, where he, one of the best single game NCAA marks of all time. And, was injured the following year and wasn't bad last year, but he wasn't, obviously even approaching the heights that he hit in 2021. So to see how he elevates is going to be interesting. But behind him, there's just a lot of question marks, a lot of high upside guys that Hammock's been talking about for a while, like Sean Pipkin. Hammock says he's ready to make a breakout. He's been saying that for a couple of years, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. He made some plays throughout the practices and everything. He really has the ability to elevate. Jalen Johnson is a local-ish product from Aurora. He has a huge frame. He missed a lot of time with injury, but he's been healthy the last couple of years. So him and Pipkin are both redshirt sophomores. They probably are in the mix, those high upside guys that have shown flashes at points. And if they put it all together with whoever the quarterback is, it's a lot of question marks, but it's that's the name of the game with this passing game. Should also point out that Andrew McElroy from St. Thomas, a transfer, he didn't exactly have like the biggest spring. He made plays here and there, but he had a breakout in the spring showcase. The offense didn't exactly have a lot of touchdowns, and he came in and he made an amazing play. In fact, I think it was on the drive without Ontario Brown. He made an amazing sideline catch, just dove, totally extended out to get it, because I want to say it was from Hampton. I think it was with the ones. And then he got the touchdown, which the offense only managed two offensive touchdowns. The offense only managed two touchdowns, which they also gave up two touchdowns. So
not good.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, if you're an IU or an NIU fan, you're hoping that it's the defense that is that good, which again, spoiler alert, we'll get to that in a minute. But if you're an NIU fan, you're kind of in the mindset, well, the defense is that good, and the offense isn't going to have to face, most defenses they face aren't going to be of this level. So, or at least MAC defenses aren't sure this level. That's the hope. Time will tell on that one though.
So in 2023, Chris Carter led the tight end group in receptions with 12 catches on 21 targets for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. You talked about Grayson Barnes kind of working in that tight end group. How did that group look this spring, and can we expect something similar, or with Grayson Barnes there and that kind of hybrid maybe type look, what do you expect in 2024?
Yeah, you take Barnes out of the mix. If you take Barnes out of the mix, Carter and Tristan Taves are both guys. They go deep at tight end. They got a lot of guys that each bring something to the table. Taves has been here. I was surprised he still had eligibility. I thought he was done. I think he had a medical red shirt at some point, in addition to the COVID year. So he's made plays in big game situations for this team in the past. Carter, there's a lot of potential with Carter. He's 6'8". It's been hard with a rhythm with the quarterbacks. Him establishing one, it looks like, when you see it in practice, like Like I said, he's 6'7", 6'8". I think the quarterbacks think he's 6'9" or 6'10", because it seems like every pass to him just goes like an inch over his head. So if that smooths out, he could be a little more, like I said, in the mix. And however you want to consider Barnes, he's probably the main target among that group. But also, if you put him in tight end, that kind of dilapidate your wide receivers. So
the offensive line loses 2 starters, and Nolan Potter to graduation and Pete Nigra over to transfer to Louisville. But they do return J.J. Lepee, John Champ, and Elvin McCord, who were starters in 2023, as well as top backups Drew Hoff, Logan Schmitz, Evan Buss, and others. Kind of how did the offensive line look this spring, and do you think they're going to continue the tradition of that strong running game Northern Illinois has?
Yeah, and should point out that Zernitz and Buss are basically starters. Both were hurt last year, like a lot, and they're pretty much starters. I think Zernitz is moving to center. I think he's going to be the center this year, if I'm remembering right. So yeah, no, the line should be as good as it's been. I mean, it's it's always a strange alchemy with the chemistry of an offensive line, but barring something really weird, this group should be as good as it was last year. You hope that sacks were an issue at time last year. It's not all on the offensive line. You hope the pass blocking steps up a little bit, but run blocking obviously definitely their forte. They did a good job, and it looks like they're it was really hard because, like I said, a lot of stuff this spring's non-contact. So they are like contact. They look out for your teammates. That was definitely the message that Hammock and the coaching staff were trying to get imparted onto them. Because again, they're since 22, they're definitely paranoid about injuries, and that then obviously kind of it's hard to gauge, especially an offensive line. But yeah, no, it should be on par or even ahead of where it was last year.
If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
It's a tough one because there's really only like 2 top level guys. There's Brown and there's Rudolph. If you say a quarterback, you don't even know who the starter is going to be. And I don't necessarily know that Hampton's like the breakout type guy. I mean, he'll be a good starter, but I'm going with Rudolph on this one because, I mean, as much as potentially as he showed, he hasn't always necessarily done it game in, game out over the course of all season. If he's able to do that, regardless of who the quarterback is, and there's stuff as a receiver where he can improve most notably, and this is something Hammock has said he wanted to see across the board, is more making something happen after the catch. So if that yards after reception, the yak can get up for him, and he starts making plays because again, they don't go downfield. They don't take a lot of big home run shots. It's a lot of short passes and then hoping the receiver makes something happen. And if Rudolph, all the skills are there. So if he could put that together and start making, the 5 or 6 yard passes into, 12, 15, 20 yard gains, that's what takes his game to the next level. That's what gets him over 1,000 yards. And if that happens, that's going to be a very good year for this team.
So you mentioned it earlier about the defensive side of things. So let's move over to that defense. And the unit was very impressive in 2023, finishing 23rd in total defense, 62nd in rushing defense, and a very impressive 6th in passing defense. What makes the pass defense even more impressive is that the Huskies weren't very effective in terms of getting sacks, ranking 92nd with 1.7 sacks per game. So sacks kind of goes hand in hand with the defensive line. They lose James Esther to graduation, and George Gums transfers off to Florida. But they do return leading tackler Rasheem Thomas and just about everyone else. How did that unit look this spring? Did anyone stand out, or were they able to find ways to generate more pressure?
Yeah, because when you look at it, it's like when you're looking at the numbers, it's like, oh, yeah, the defensive line, 92nd in sacks. They applied, like, if you just watched them week in and week out, you wouldn't have known that number was so low. That was the defensive line is, and the front seven as a whole is definitely a strength of this team. It is, absolutely where the strength in this team lies, is in that front seven. Secondary is good at everything, but that front seven and that defensive line is really, really good. One of the missing pieces last year, Pierce Oppong, a defensive end. He's been starting since 2020. He missed most. I think he played the first game and was done right away. He's back this year, and that's going to give him a big presence on the outside. That should be a difference maker in that sack department, I'm thinking. That's going to help get those numbers up. But no, this, again, it's hard to say. It's hard to argue with numbers, but this defensive line was a lot better than those sack numbers indicate.
The linebacking group loses the third leading tackler, Tyler Jackson, but does return second leading tackler, Jaden Dolphin, and others. How did the linebacking group look this spring?
Yeah, as much as I just talked about how good the line is, the linebacker group was probably, and it's hard to tell because I'm not at every practice and, whatever, I'm not a coach, but I would say it was probably the best group on the team. The linebacking group, Jaden Dolphin's just made such incredible strides. His position coach, himself, Hammock have all said that his leadership has really come on, which obviously is he's, the guy now, or at least the most experienced one in the team. That's a big deal. The other name, and I think this is a spoiler alert for what's about to come up, but Christian Furman is a transfer in, and he basically has been plugged in for Tyler Jackson. And he's looked incredible.
So moving over to the defensive backfield, they pretty much all return. They do lose Devin Lafayette to Troy, but Deron Gilbert, Nate Valcarel, Jordan Hanson, Jason Profit, Jacob Finley all return. They bring in Kawan Davis coming over from Washington State. Is this group ready to kind of dominate again like they did in 2023?
Yeah, I think that they gave up some big plays. They would do that. Especially, during the 4-game losing streak. I mean, it kind of was like a tale of two different teams. When the team lost, they couldn't stop anything. And when they were winning, you couldn't throw the ball against them. So, they give up like 320 yards a game. That was pretty much like 640 in half of them and 0 in the other half. So, I mean, it was, I think this is a lot more consistent of a group. You mentioned Val Carcel. Oh my Lord, during the spring. It wasn't just the spring showcase. It was throughout the spring. The dude's a ball hawk. I mean, he was just making play after play. He was bringing pressure. They can blitz him if they want. I'm pretty sure he's a safety. They blitzed him a couple times. He all over the field making plays. He just, if how he played in the spring translates to how he's going to play in the fall, then he's going to be one of the best defensive players in the MAC.
And it seems like you got a lot of players to choose from here on the defense side. If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
Well, I just talked about Val Carcel and Oppong a bunch. I mean, those are two probably of your prime candidates. I'm going to go a little under the radar with a name just to get a different name out there. And it's someone who could play himself into a lot more playing time. And that's there's actually a lot of guys. Like Furman could be there. You really can't go wrong with picking a name on this defense, to be honest with you, for having a big year. I'm going to go with Jordan Hanson. He's been with the team since 2020, since the 0-6 COVID year. He saw his playing time decrease, as you mentioned Devin Lafayette. His playing time got more and more, but Lafayette's gone now. I think you're going to see Hanson make the most of his opportunities, and even though it's a loaded group at safety, I really, between him and CJ Brown, or between Lafayette and CJ Brown being gone, I think there are a couple more opportunities, and I think Hanson, you'll see him with a couple picks, you'll see him with a couple sacks, you'll see him with some big stops, and from a name that definitely has flown under the radar in this group of quote unquote big name guys.
Looks like we lost Luke for whatever reason. The spring practice is now completed. What what position group or groups do you think is the most concerning?
I'd go wide receiver. I know quarterback's a giant question mark as well. I don't know if passing game counts as a position group to answer your question, but if I had to choose one between wide receiver and quarterback, I think quarterback will sort itself out. But I mean, behind Rudolph, I mean, they're going to need guys to step up, and most of the guys are tight ends. Most of the, pass catching guys are tight ends. And I know, they like the smash mouth type style. Hammock's an old school guy, and that, fits their MO. But, if you want Rudolph to make plays, you're going to have to not be able to, double them every time. You're going to have another receiver that's at least a threat. You're probably going to need two guys to step up, like I said, guys like Pipkin or Barnes or something like that. Or I'm sorry, Pipkin or Johnson that finally have the breakouts that have been expected of them for a while now. So, yeah, it's probably the wide receiver that's like the biggest maybe issue right now.
Do you think they will look to the portal to kind of, add anything there, or maybe another position?
I mean, maybe, but I don't think so. I think Hammock mainly goes to the portal for so I don't think he's done like a ton of late additions from the portal, from the spring. Plus, isn't it closed or about to close?
To enter is closed, yeah.
Oh,
but you can add anyone, I guess, at any point in time. But no one new can enter. I think that closed May 1st was the deadline.
Okay. So yeah, I'm thinking fans obviously I think would want someone to, if you're a fan, you probably would want another wide receiver, a proven commodity to come in, but that probably creates more problems in the long run from what Hammer's trying to accomplish. So I don't know. I think he stands pat, but I wouldn't my monocle wouldn't be falling out if they end up picking up somebody.
This NIU team has a lot of strong pieces to it here in 2024. What would you say its main strength is?
I mean, it's the old school aspect of it. I mean, it's the running the ball and it's the defense. That's the ability to go old school. That's this team's identity. That's what Hammock spent 5 or 6 years now trying to craft. That seems to have taken a hold, and that's the strength of this team. That's old school smash mouth, still using a fullback type of football.
When we talked about the transfer portal a little bit, but also the NIL in today's age, is a big part of it. When it comes to recruiting high school players and even retaining existing players, does NIU have a strong NIL? Is that something they're just getting started, or kind of where do they stand with that?
They have a collective. Obviously, that stuff they do it through a third party, a private, so it's not foyable, so it is private. So I don't know how successful it is. I can't imagine it's a huge income source for even the top guys, but I know they do have a Husky collective type situation when it comes to NIL stuff.
It seems more and more that the demand of the head coach is really turning into more of a general manager type of a role. You got to recruit your freshmen that you want to come in. You got to recruit your own team to come back every year. There's fundraising, and I don't know if it's just the off season or whatnot, but it kind of seems like there's less X's and O's type stuff. Do you see this trend happening at NIU?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it replaces the X's and O's, but it's definitely an element now. And especially one thing you said, they're recruiting your own players, especially, for a group of 5 school, for an NIU team. Unsolicited, Hammock brought up about how tampering happens. Players who aren't in the portal are being recruited by big programs. At least that's what he said. So, that's something that they got to be on guard against. I mean, Saban admitted to it.
He admitted to it during the draft.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of open secret or just a joke or however, whatever spin you want to put on it. But yeah, no, that's they had to go through that with Trayvon Rudolph. He entered the portal right before the bowl. They ended up talking him into coming back, and it's a testament to what Hammock's doing with this program. He does have a relationship with a lot of the players. That's why I don't think they're as hurt by the portal as a lot of other MAC schools or G5 schools are. They managed to get out unscathed, and they pluck some pieces from it every once in a while too. So, but no, that's definitely an element. Is the recruiting your own players has become a giant a part of it.
The 2024 season has ended. You're looking back upon it. What would it take for you to look back and say, "Hey, it was a successful year for the Northern Illinois Huskies"?
I think it involves getting to the MAC championship game, being competitive in the league, getting the MAC title, and winning a bowl game, because this team's loaded with talent. I mean, it was last year. I don't think there's one person, in that locker room that's going to say they didn't underachieve last year. That wasn't a disappointing season. I know they were off the bad 2-10 campaign, but obviously that was a big injury thing. I mean, that they like 3 quarterbacks go down there. They're rolling with their 4th string quarterback for like 4 games. So there's just that one you can chalk off, to the injuries. But last year, for a while, it wasn't looking like they were making a bowl game. I mean, they went 6-6 in the regular season. They lost to their FCS game. They lost after that Boston College win. They just kind of, they lost 4 straight. And then when they started to get things back together, they lost 2 or 3 more toward the end of the year and had to win their last 2 even to make a bowl game. So even though, it was a bowl win for the first time in 12 years or whatever it was, it still, wasn't as good of a season it could be. So now you're looking at, like I said, Hammock's going into, I think it's year 6, I want to say, came in 2019. So they don't only have one MAC title, which, for the, recent history of this program going back about since about 2 decades now, almost 3, that's a 6-year stretch where they only have one MAC title isn't, what they're used to necessarily. So I think that's probably internally as where it is every year, but, realistically, I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to compete for a MAC title.
Well, we've talked a lot about NIU, covered a lot, the defensive side, offensive side. Is there anything else that you want to share that you think we should know about this Northern Illinois Husky football team?
More of a question. You guys would know this better than I do. Do lots of G5 schools not do a spring game? I thought like literally everybody does a spring game.
I think it's definitely trending to not. And I don't think it's just a G5 thing. I think that's all of college football. I think, I mean, look at Ole Miss. Like, they didn't even play any football. They played like 7-on-7. They had a hot dog eating contest, a slam dunk contest. Like, it wasn't really much football. But yeah, I definitely think that's a trend just in general. I think, folks are worried about showing too much. They don't want people to get hurt. I think it's just a combination of all those things. But yeah, at least from my perspective, I think it's definitely a trend where it's basically a glorified practice versus an actual game.
Yeah, because I know
this year
still TV right. Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I think this year there was about 5-ish G5 teams that didn't do a spring game.
Some of them didn't even do a spring showcase. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I know with the larger schools, the P5, there's TV rights. They do televise them, so they have to do, because the Ole Miss thing, at least that's entertaining to watch.
Right.
So they can't be super mad about that. But yeah, tipping your hand. I mean, obviously that's a huge thing for Hammock. Hammock is, like I said, a secretive type guy, and that was all they said after practice. Yeah, I'm sure there was someone from Western Illinois here, because that's their week 1 opponent. And there was someone from Western Illinois in the stand, so we didn't do that much offensively. Yeah. So that's college football.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again. Eddie, for sharing your time and knowledge with us today.
Hey, no problem. It was a pleasure.
If you're watching on YouTube and have not already done so, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.